in Lake Worth. I did want to recognize some of our staff. One is walking away, Maxine DePaz, who's our Planning and Preservation Manager. Carolyn Ansay is the legal counsel to the Historic Resource Preservation Board. Amy Sun is our Preservation Coordinator. Katie Jacobs is our Associate Planner for Historic Preservation. We have a couple of board members here. Herman Robinson is the chair, and Darren Engel is the vice chair. We have a little program. Hopefully you received that via email or notice from this association. It will also be available online on the city's website. There are two parts to it. We have a general summary for a agenda, which we can go to and follow sort of loosely. There's also a little exercise which you can fill out at your leisure. There are 3 different sections of it. There's some questions getting at how you feel about your community, your thoughts about historic preservation, where you'd like to see the program to go, and just general awareness of what historic resources we have and the types of programs that fall within the historic preservation program itself. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in and maybe we can get the music. Yeah. This speaker is not as loud as the one we had last time, but if you can hear me okay, we're going to start. We have critical presentations. You can interrupt me at any time to ask a question or provide a comment. We will have a little bit of time after each one to talk about what's presented, and I want to give you all as much opportunity as you can to give feedback to staff and myself on your thoughts, your experiences, your feelings about the preservation program, and where you'd like to see it go, and we can help you understand where it's come from, where it is, and where we hope we can take it from here. But why do those places matter in Lake Worth? John F. Kennedy, as president, sort of initiated the formal preservation movement in the United States. And he made a platform and a quote from him talking about that architecture, communities, historic districts are an integral part of our history and our natural environment. They should be preserved. Soon after his assassination, they moved toward the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966, which then brought together the National Veterans of Historic Places, Secretary of Interior Guidelines, and formalized the preservation movement in the United States. But historic preservation, in a nutshell, is a way to bring continuity to a community. The world is constantly changing. Lake Worth has obviously changed, but I will say that through one means or another, Lake Worth has probably changed the least of any coastal community in South Florida. And one of that is because you will care about your community. It has been naturally preserved for a number of reasons. We instituted a preservation program back in the early 2000s, his first historic district. And I think a lot of communities are envious of Lake Worth in the sense that it has preserved its historic downtown. You have intact neighborhoods, and you have a very amazing collection of different architectural styles throughout the city. You may recognize this corner, this building is gone, but it's nice that we have a picture of it. And I do want to try to bring the sign back at some point, which is very cool. This is the intersection of Lake Avenue and Dixie Highway. This is where the little French restaurant is now. Unfortunately, we lost that building. There's a picture there of the early pioneers. Historic preservation embraces beauty. This is one of our favorite buildings, that art modern, deco-style apartment building on Lake Avenue in Berkeley Cake House, which many of you are familiar with, which was the American Red Cross Showcase House last year. Mainly because someone chose to spend a lot of money renovating that property, and also they just never had one in Lake Worth, so having an historic district and historic building really appealed to the Red Cross. History and learning, I don't know whether many of you know this, but a lot of you might. This old school building, which Lake Worth has a history of buildings losing their tops in hurricanes. This one lost its top and was renovated into being the City Hall. And then the City Hall, as you know, moved into an auditorium building, which is downtown at North Dixie Highway. And then we have our historic library. So there are some landmark style buildings that are associated with the history of the city itself. Architecture is an important piece of historic preservation. This is the Lake Theater, which became a number of different things before it became the Cultural Council of Palm Beach County's home. I will have to say that I did work with the renovation project for this building, and it's sort of a little landmark downtown, and we hope to see continue to be a placeholder there. The sacred Lake Forest, as many of you know, has a lot of churches. A lot of them are historic. The Presbyterian Church, the Methodist Church. There are several others that are of architectural quality that are preserved. The Episcopal Church is one that comes to mind. Creativity. Lake Forest is seen as the arts center of Palm Beach County. We have the Palm Beach the Arts Festival. We have Lulu with the CRA, Community Development Association, and the Design Arts Center, which moved into an old freight depot from the FEC period that was donated to the city, and we leased it to them. And creativity is part of what makes historic preservation both a challenge as well as a reward, because it takes some creativity in order to preserve the buildings that we have and move them into the modern era and keep them intact. Preservation also means sustainability, and we don't look at sustainability in the narrow form, which is kind of came about in the energy conservation. We look at it as how we have a sustainable community. That's fiscally, educationally, buildings that are already built have inherent embodied energy. They're less expensive to maintain or keep up, and have to build a whole new one. That is becoming a little bit more of a challenge in going about it when it comes to sea level rise, FEMA regulations, and building code. But we are committed to trying to preserve the built environment of Lake Forest because it is a sustainable feature. Community, the old pool and the new old pool. Wes Blackwood could tell us more about the pool than I probably can, but it has been a center of our community for about 85 years or more. Economics. There are a whole number of reasons that economics make sense for historic preservation. There is a little folder out here put out by the National Park Service and the Florida Department of Historic Preservation that talks about the economics of historic preservation. There have been a number of studies over the years. My first foray into that was looking at why people come to visit a place. And the first thing was beaches, second thing was history, and the third was shopping. We have the beaches and the history, we're trying to get to shopping. But economics from historic preservation adds jobs and income. Hopefully when we get the Gulfstream Hotel renovated and restored, that will bring as much as 65 or more jobs to the city. Heritage tourism is a big thing for Florida. We are the tourism capital probably of the United States, and many people come here for the heritage aspect of it, learning about the history of Florida and people who lived here. Preservation is a revitalization mechanism. You've seen part of that downtown. You'll see soon 801 Lake Avenue, which is the older building right across from Claire's. They're finally starting to renovate that. It's been before the board, I believe, 4 times for the backstretch project. It takes creative talent and investment to preserve a community's historic resources. Studies have shown, too, that property values are more stable and rise at a higher percentage rate in historic districts than areas that are not historic. And then we're hoping to also use historic preservation as a business incubation process of work. There are some credits to be given to this. We want you to think about a couple of questions. Are there things that we should be doing better in Lake Forest with historic preservation? There are disagreements among a lot of us on how preservation should be done, the process, the decision-making, what is historic, what is not. And there are arguments about what to retain and how to retain it. That's probably why most of you are here, is to understand or probably give us feedback on what you feel is the desire of the community on what should be preserved, how it should be preserved, and what you would place to be important. And I think for all of us, history, memory, and continuity through our old places gives us self-worth and good for people. Through the Charette process, doing the land development regulations, I heard over and over again that the citizens and property of Lake Forest really value its uniqueness, its charm, its character, its cottage history, and you want to see that preserved and maintained. You don't want to become like Florida Beach or downtown West Palm. No offense, Frederick, since you're here. Much of that historic commercial buildings are gone or have changed a lot. And Lake Forest has the unique opportunity in that it has preserved its history of buildings. I think the last presentation, part of the fact is that over time, Lake Forest hasn't been as affluent or prosperous as other communities. And by default, a lot of buildings were preserved because people couldn't afford to maintain them. We're hoping to help change that. There is right now more investment in the city this year and last year than the combined 8 years altogether. So we do believe we are turning the tide. Your area has probably experienced experience some more new construction in any other historic districts in the city. Hopefully you're happy with what's being built or has already been built. That's some credit to all that. Lots of folks help with the flag presentation outside of the city. So with that in mind, hopefully set in context, I'd like to open the floor up to get what your thoughts are, maybe what brought you to the meeting. We have two other little short presentations to get into. You have your agenda. One is looking at what you'd like to look like your community. And that part of that includes talking about the architectural styles that are here. And then we have another one dealing with historic preservation, the mechanics of it, talking about how it works and why. So, Teresa.
This is a real basic question, and you may have covered in the last meeting, and I just didn't catch it. Going back in this whole process, who decided we were to have historic districts? Who got in the car and drove around and said historic contributing? And then, how was the owner of that property notified and allowed to opt out if they chose to do so? I heard so many urban legends about this, and everybody has a slightly different story.
Yes. Amy, didn't I think you on our last slide presentation was a little less than this about after the National Historic Preservation Act passed, the federal government decided that it was imperative that we identify what our historic resources are, provide mechanisms to encourage communities to adopt preservation ordinances, have historic preservation boards, and then also nominate things to the National Register as well as to local designation. The monies became available, I believe, in the early 80s. Lake Worth was one of the latter ones in South Florida that was surveyed. The first survey was in 1991, done by archaeological consultants. That was the Dixie Highway survey, which I believe Wes has referred to in his blog on several occasions. Same year, there were historic property surveys of the city of Lake Worth by the Historic Properties Association Incorporated. Another one was done in College Park in 1998 by Janice. I can't tell you whether all of these companies are still in business or not. I believe Archaeological Consultants is. Frederick may be able to help share my memory. At the same time, this is going on West Palm being surveyed as well. In 2000, there was one for South Palm Park, and then Northeast is Lucerne in 2002 by GAI Consultants. There is a methodology under the money that was available from the state that was federal passive money and had to do a master site file. So each building that was at that time 50 years old or older had a little form filled out, a picture taken. There was a evaluation of what its integrity was based on its period of being constructed, what changes had been done at that time based on whether the building was pretty much like it was when it was originally built or was significantly like what it was in the period since it was deemed possible as being contributed in the historic district. And those that were newer than 50 years old or older, newer than 50 years, or had been changed so much that they didn't look like what they originally did or something else, those were listed as possibly being non-contributing. The surveys also identified possible historic district boundaries. With that information in hand, the city did do, as I understand it, the documentation that I've seen, initiated designations of districts working with neighborhood associations. There was a letter sent out that if you did not want to be in a historic district, you had to send that back to the city. Those are on file somewhere in the archives. Someone did ask about those probably a couple of years ago due to a lawsuit related to Gulfstream and some Pike referendum. But at the time, the number of people that wanted to opt out was not more than 50%, so those areas were designated. The opt-out did not provide a vehicle for that person's individual property to be deleted from a historic district. It was just the National Register program, which is a little different than local, does city requested 67% of the property owners actually signed a petition requesting designation. And through that process, I think 13 historic districts were listed. I'm not quite sure how they do it now. And we have not initiated any more historic districts since the original 6 were designated. Yes, ma'am.
May I ask you, I live in a historic district. Anytime I have anything done, I'm not in an historic home, but anytime I have anything done, I have to go through the historical process. And I want to know why I have to be bothered with all that.
Well, there's a number of caveats to that. One is an equal protection piece, is that we do, under the law, and our preservation laws, do treat every building in the historic district as a participating member there. The rules are a little more stringent for contributing property, less so for non-contributing property. Our ordinance has not evolved very much since the original designation. Amy and Katie and Maxine and I have talked about the fact that we've never done specific guidelines for historic district, which is really needed. The review level under our ordinance for non-contributing properties is probably more stringent than some other districts in other cities.
It's just hard to do anything.
Nobody can do anything.
Can't do
Nobody
anything.
showed up. They're very
I've been
frustrated.
waiting 6 months to do something to my house. I've waited 6 months to
Is she slow?
put a shutter in, if I'm lucky, or ready. It's ridiculous.
People have to fly down here from up north to take care of a window replacement.
We have,
Can that change? Can we change that?
well,
It's been so many years, can we take another?
There's a house on South 12 that they stuccoed it, and I think they got fined because the stucco wasn't authentic.
they weren't fine.
Well, they were told to redo it.
Well, I'll explain why that.
That kind of thing, I think, is
Well,
really
there's
putting
a
people
lot
on.
of misinformation given out. Let's take the stucco example as one.
Just stucco.
It's a building that the property owner worked very closely with staff to preserve the windows and wanted to restore the outside stucco. Under the rules that we have, staff is very limited on what they can approve administratively. Otherwise, it has to go before the board. In the case of that house, the person did choose to restore the original windows and did a lovely job, and they had a request to repair and fix the stucco. The stucco, as it was completely flat. It's a building.
Why?
Well, hope that may I finish, please? It's indicative of the architectural style that was there. So the approval was you replace it as it was, and you can go ahead and do that. When it came back in for inspection, the contractor has chose to do what's called a contractor builder's knockdown finish, which is not smooth. Staff could not sign off on it. They were given 2 options. You can go before the board, which finishes what happened, and the board could approve that if it was appropriate, or you can smooth it, sand it down, and put it back as being smooth. Staff does not have the ability to say that smooth and knockdown finish are the same thing.
I think that's, to me, that's an example of something. We have dilapidated houses that are like broken windows and mildew. That's ridiculous. That's a real waste to me of good resources and time. And people are trying, and the house is clean and safe. We have real
Well, part of
problems.
what we're hoping to have now is for you to give us feedback, and we can look at what areas can be looked at and evaluated, made a little bit more simple.
That's
What decisions can be moved from the preservation board to staff. I will say that it's probably because of the tremendous amount of staff turnover and turmoil within the city. I mean, just as an example, this department's had, I think, 6 directors in the past 12 years, and I've been there 5, so we had some didn't last very long at all. I believe there was a lot of distrust that staff wasn't qualified, didn't know what they were doing. They were not managed overly well, so over time, much of the authority of staff was moved to advisory boards or to the city commission. I hope that over time we have built a level of confidence in staff and that you know that we know what we're doing or trying our best to do best by you, and that some things can be moved back to staff, which have been taken away because it was inconsistent. And I mean, to be perfectly honest, people didn't trust anything staff did. And that's what I faced when I got here, is that everyone thought we were complete morons and didn't know what we were doing.
I think because there's so many dilapidated buildings that really need the attention rather than some homeowner, whether, it's flat or...
And I mentioned the last presentation, I will take part of the blame for the fact that the preservation program we have not addressed as early as I would like. The department that I oversee was originally fixed, the building condition fixed, a number of other things. Preservation is kind of taken to the backseat, and this is the last area of my department that we are getting at to really fundamentally look at what's good about it, what's bad, what needs to be fixed, what can be changed.
More reasonable, and where the real problems are. We have a lot of really problem houses on South Conway, South Fifth Avenue in our neighborhood. They're abandoned, they've been sitting there. Falling down.
The city had the worst abandonment rate probably in the entire Palm Beach County. There were over 2,000 properties that were in foreclosure or abandoned at 11,000 parcels, which is a huge percentage of the city which is left derelict. Unfortunately, the city has had to step in and tear those houses down. I think we've torn down maybe 35 at this point. We've got a few more scheduled.
Along Brant Park Village is very nice.
And right.
It's not the park, the houses.
The houses.
A lot of them.
Also, the majority of the homes are in great condition. We do have a few issues. Sorry, I'm the president of the Brant Park Neighborhood Association. Someone was kind of
I think there's some work to do.
I think there's a lot going on across the city. And that's what
It's
why
right
we're
on,
here.
right.
It's why we're here to meet with them.
Ms. Miller, we have your hand up again.
You know, I wanted to follow up on the question I asked. So the homeowner gets a letter saying, congratulations, you're in a historic district. You have a contributing historic residence. What options did the homeowner have to say no?
At the time, as I understand it, from the documentation that we had, they were to have historic district designated by an ordinance that goes through the city commission for 2 readings. Every property owner was notified of that ordinance. It's required by public notice under Florida statute 162 or 3, I think.
Right.
So we're all getting notice that this was happening. The property owner provided a letter to the city saying that I don't want to be in the district. Those votes were tabulated, and in the 6 districts that were designated, there were not more than 50% of the property owners who did not want the historic district. So
Not
they're
the
designated.
district, the individual residents being designated as contributing historic.
That's the process doesn't work that way. You're either designated as historic district in every building.
I did all my work at.
Under the ordinance, and now every decision by the city commission and the preservation board has to be based on substantial common evidence. And the reason for the designations were a collection of buildings that represent a certain period of development in the city. You know, the group of buildings are contributing or non-contributing. There were defensible boundaries created, and there wasn't the ability to just opt out and say, I don't want to be in the historic district because you didn't want to be. It was a collective whole in the sense the community bought into historic preservation, and more than half the community said yes. It's like when we vote for a city commissioner, if more than half vote for him, he goes in office, or she. If someone doesn't like it, you just can't pick your own city commissioner. So it's a democratic process, and some people may have been felt they were disenfranchised, didn't like that process. That's the process that we have had, and that's what we have now. Mr. Guthrie?
I heard you explain this earlier, and I wanted to say something then, but that is, to me, the total opposite of what democracy is about. We're going to do this, and those of you who don't want to do it, write a letter back, and if it's over 50%, then we won't do it. As opposed to getting a group of people together and say that we want to opt in and we want to become a historic district, and then people who, in other words, those are the people that do this. And I've heard you explain it several times now, and it seems like it's the exact opposite of how it should have happened. The government wanted to do this, and if you didn't want to do it, go ahead and send your letter in, and we'll take note of that. I believe the historic district is a good idea in the long run. I just believe that this has been, I don't know, nitpicked or it's become monster because people are not able to make improvements on the minor thing. I mean, the major things that they want to do: windows, roofs, and garage doors and front doors and openings and that. Those are the things that people want to personalize their house. They want to increase the security of their house. They want to increase the energy efficiency of their house. And all of a sudden, because it wasn't the way the house was built 60, 70, 80 years ago, that they have to go back with the exact same materials and everything else. Well, technology's changed. And so that is what I'm hearing around.
way. From everything that I've heard is the problem that we're having with this whole thing. It's not that it's a historic district. I think we're all in favor of a historic district. I certainly am. I love the fact that I'm in a historic home. I want to preserve it as much as I can. The problem is that for everybody that is in such a structure, there needs to be an easier, better process to do upgrades, like Chip said. When you do want to replace your roof, or when you have to replace your roof, what can you replace it with? There has to be easier ways how to continue on with the historic home. I want to do my windows probably soon. I have part of my windows are the old windows. I don't want to restore those windows. Those windows are crap. But I want to replace them with something that looks exactly like the ones that were in there. From the visual perspective, from the outside, nothing will change. But they will be impact glass, they will be energy efficient, they will do everything what a modern home today will do. Just like you said, there's a process in your presentation, there's a process for energy efficiency, for going with modern technologies into an old home. That needs to be addressed, and I think this is one of the key issues. And everybody that I talk to that is either involved in the process of getting something permitted or has been involved, or has been shut down, I should say, in getting something permitted. The process is the problem. So my question would be, what can we do together as a community that lives in the historic district in order to change the way that things are being run right now, to preserve the idea of the historic district, as well as deal much easier with homeowners and be able, as a homeowner, be able to do things without always running against a wall.
Well, the fundamental process of review probably won't change. The Preservation Board and staff, we collectively have been talking over a period of time, and these meetings with neighborhood associations is one vehicle to get input from the citizenry on what they have as concerns on the process, the program. We do realize